he on the placard next to him, the veteran, it says like, oh, venerating like the greatest era, like the tough men, the ones that were going to war. Um, and it's like, why are we like celebrating all this like killing and violence? Why is that the best era? Shouldn't the best era be where we're not doing all those things and where there's none of that going on? Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, like, time and again, they like to say that, you know, these tough guys are needed, and we need these people that are willing to kill people that they don't know, because of government, government distress and anger and enmity between other nations. And uh, it really is peculiar how deep the, I guess it's not in a rabbit hole, more like how vast the umbrella is.
Mm. Yeah, guest speaker talks about that. Like, so we're okay with violence, but we're not okay with. We're okay with certain things. We're okay with not certain things. It's a big umbrella of what we're okay with that we generally shouldn't be. The music industry, I gotta stop listening to the crap I'm listening to for sure. Get more. I was finally listening to some piano. It's just so much healthier for the soul to be following good versus following bad because eventually it'll creep into your life.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I feel like so much of it has to do with like that angsty feeling, like what to do with your anger, what to do with your darkness. And I think, I don't know, I get it. Like, listening to like a maybe like an Eminem song, or listening to something that is really harsh because you've gone through hard stuff and you're like, yeah, 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 or like even metal music. But then it's like, time and again, you look at Job, you look at these people in the Bible, and it seems like the answer to these things is to accept the darkness and reality, and accept that there are a lot of bad things out there, but we don't need to engage in them to heal ourselves from them. And a big theme about modern psychiatry, or like, like Carl Jung and a lot of these people, is um, you have to like expose your shadow and like show your shadow, like.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
And it comes up again and again. I went to this Mankind Project thing years ago, and that was such a big part of the whole experience, was them saying you had to do all this shadow work. and
Mm-hmm.
and I think if you do have like dark things that keep coming up in your head, I think it is good to talk about them. But it's like, I don't know. It's like, it's bad to hide them. It's bad to put on like a fake false front and just pretend everything's okay. Of course, um,
Yeah.
but but I also don't think that like you should be continuing to do this all the time, like constantly, like feeding into your shadow and needing to bring it up. And I don't know. Like I feel like whatever you.
It's like an analogy I'd make for that is like if you need this release for everything, it's like then child porn should be legal because we just need to get pedophiles this release and they'll be fine. When in actuality, it would make society so much more worse, and it's clearly obvious to everyone else that it would be worse. But for some reason, we have this separation where it's like no, everyone has this shadow, and it doesn't come from anything. It doesn't come from anything. It comes from naturally inside yourself, which it's such a huge idea with Paul too, is that humans are innately sinful, and it's true. All of us have sinned, but what's Jesus say once he's healed all these people is go and sin no more. It's totally possible for us to live a sin-free life, and a large part of that I think is just following that which is good.
Yeah, I think, a lot of some people, it's possible that they followed Jesus's word their whole lives, and they've maybe sinned a little bit, but like they've been pretty dang good. And but I think, yeah, it seems like a lot of people have it, like maybe in like their high school years or their college years is when a lot of this stuff seems to happen,
Mm-hmm.
where you have all this darkness come out, and it's like, let it play, because you're a young adult, you're shifting gears into being somebody who's more autonomous. And I think that's such a good allegory, or that you made, about, yeah, if you're gonna, if people need to get all this darkness out, oh, we would protect the children because there's all this child porn out there. But maybe that's the kind of the Japanese idea, where you have all the anime, where it's like it looks like it, but it's not actually it. So they're like, oh well, I'm not actually harming children. I'm just looking at this animated thing. But
Yeah.
then like you're saying, it's born from within, and it's that person who has that problem. I doesn't ultimately like. I don't think. I think in their heart of in their deepest self, their soul, they don't want that. Like you shouldn't want those feelings. And they may, and if you continue to feed them with child pornography or something like that, it's gonna be hard to put them away. You're gonna be thinking about it. It's in your vision all the time. It's gonna be
Yeah. Plus, if you're like a mentally deranged individual, like someone who's thinking about like psychopath shit and stuff like that, there's a huge release for that in video games, which probably just makes them think about it even more. They just and I don't like. There's this whole like notion of uh, police are able to catch these individuals, like someone who's randomly murdering someone. There'll be like episodes on TV about how they find them and whatnot. When it's like in reality, you just don't find like people who do crimes really whatsoever. Um,
yeah. And it seems
by
like
the way,
it seems like
if you ever start recording while we're talking, I'm totally fine with that. A lot of good podcasts just have full conversation starting, not just some cheesy intro.
yeah. I've been started. I've probably been going for like a 3 minutes here, 4 or 5 minutes. Um,
Great, great, great.
yeah, at the very beginning, but I didn't. We didn't record, but then yeah, for a little bit here, we've been recording, and I think it's gonna work really well. I have you next to the mic, and the Logic program I use to record all the music is on there, and it seems seamless. It's not going to be having the problems that Discord is working with the server. Um,
Yeah.
and this Discord has worked a handful of times in the past very well. I just the last couple times it seems like it's had some troubles. Um,
Mm.
but also, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
it's just the servers sometimes just don't work. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, like I think it's interesting in a way because um, video games is such a vast uh, thing. It's I mean like books, movies. It's such a there's so much in video games. There's seemingly really like pacifist, calm video games, and it makes me think of
Mm-hmm.
guest speaker and how she talks about how she loves the idea of video games, but doesn't necessarily like the execution. And there are a lot of games that I mechanically love, but then I look at all of the like iconography and the things around it, and I'm just like, oh, this is so like, why does it have to be like this? And it makes me want to make my own video game, and I know we can totally do that. We both have grown up with them, and I do believe there can be, obviously there can be good games out there, and if we can gear people that are so ingrained in video game culture like we are towards more of these healthier stories and engaging cooperative um, games, then I think I think we can totally have these things and do better with them. It's just there's so many even like really um, like not very like thing like examples of things that are like very surface level, like they'll throw globe, planet, all of the or a lot of the like falsehoods of our day and age. They'll like openly talk about how bad so many of the like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty type games are because it just puts you in this place where like you're constantly chasing after somebody trying to like shoot him in the head, and it's so I don't know. It just I think maybe if you're like a hunter, you could find some sort of like equivalency there. You could find some sort of like one-to-one idea there. But it's weird when it's humans. It's weird when it's like children. You're shooting children of God, right? Like
Yeah.
people that have all these amazing things going on and all these interesting things going on in their lives, and you're gonna end their life in a second. And I know it's a game. I know it's not real. I know like they have little facial models. They don't look real, but I just think when you go out in public, it can make it seem like most people are NPCs, and I don't know. It's a hard thing
Yeah.
when
I,
you're
I, I think it contributes to like a lot of violence. Like the most common violence is probably like domestic violence. And what's the guy probably doing the whole time? Watching TV shows about violence or playing games about violence. It's just so inherent in our society Like so many, I've entertained a lot of high level competition with video games and like shooters in particular. Everyone is on Adderall. Like it's just like straight up a league for people on meth.
Oh
It's
my god.
ridiculous. Like it's like people are ruining their lives by becoming so addicted to these drugs, and society is rewarding them for doing that by making these massive competitions for them. And it's just like maybe we should have some drug restrictions on people like this. Because if you see, well, that's what the pros are doing, then I'm just going to emulate that. I'm going to go to my doctor and say I have an ADHD problem, and they're going to be like, oh, I know the perfect solution for that. This form of meth, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, and it's so common that these doctors will offer it readily, right at the beginning. As soon as you ask for it or show the slightest sign, they'll bring up this medication. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's and then okay. What it also makes me think of is a really big video game that I've always been turned off from, just because it seems like people spend their lives doing. I mean, South Park did a whole thing on it. Is Warcraft? Um,
Oh, World of Warcraft.
yeah,
Okay.
because it feels like this giant Skinner's box where it's endless. Like you literally, like you can you can keep playing the game your whole life, and like still there's more things to do. Um,
Right.
and yeah, I mean, I have this story where one of the ladies I used to work with at the nursery years ago, I thought it was kind of a better story where her mother, I believe, or her grandmother, I think it was her grandmother, was so ill that like she couldn't really go outside and do much. So the way she bonded with her family was through this World of Warcraft game, and it from that angle, I could see it being of some help. Like, oh, you got your little character, and your grandma can't do much, so here she is. She's now all of a sudden capable. It kind of reminds me of the Avatar premise, where you have this, injured military veteran who, he's in a wheelchair and he can't do anything. He kind of hates his situation, but then he goes to Pandora, and he can walk again, and he's this amazing being because he put his being into the, what is it, like the tree and the Pandoran, the blue person, and is able to like.
Hey, I gotta answer this other call real quick. I'm sorry,
Oh, for sure.
but continue going with the viewers if you don't mind.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a good analogy to be made here with World of Warcraft and this big movie franchise we have, Avatar, where um, you have people that may have like inability of maybe have poor mobility, or they aren't getting out as much because they're frail and sick, and they have this platform where they can now engage where they couldn't. Um, and but I think overall most people are capable. Most people can go out and do a myriad tons of things, and they aren't stuck on a TV or stuck on these platforms. And I think World of Warcraft, like I just said, is it kind of does feel like a Skinner's box where it keeps people stuck and they're not really learning anything important. And I mean, I don't know how many times you gotta invade the dragon base and you know and kill off the dragon and do the same quest, do the same quest in a different color, different color dragon, and it's I can understand somewhat of the appeal to it. It's cool to like fantasize about medieval or biblical times, and um, but then at the other end, um, man, like you could be doing so many other things. Oh, hold on, we're gonna get this all going again. I think he has a phone call here. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. I'm not able to just record all the time,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's just I gotta put aside for a second and then I'm back.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is such a great topic. I didn't think we'd be going into this, well, going into this podcast, but yeah, definitely. Video games it's like porn.
It
It's
kind of is.
just as bad.
Yeah.
Depends on the game. Like something like Animal Crossing, like where it's just like you're fishing and you're doing all sorts of like normal things, like a simulated life. Like that's great. But it's like also at the same time, it's like something Like as soon as it's through a screen, they'll lock them up and they'll put them in a pool while they're pregnant and make no way to get out. Like there's so many like demonic things, and like the game kind of adheres to that, where it's like you can date the Grim Reaper if you kill enough people and keep flirting with him. Eventually, you can make him your boyfriend. It's like it's supposed to be a kids game, but it gets turned into something that's not a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good way to interpret it. Where I remember watching The Office years ago, and they referred to like The Sims as like Second Life, and yeah, like the character, I think Jim, he was, he's always bored at work, doesn't want to be there, and that's kind of a big aspect of the show, The Office. But then in this game, he's like flying and he has a guitar, and it's it's kind of cool. It's interesting, but yeah, there often is like there almost always is. I think of like Fable or like you're saying Sims, this option where you can turn your character and just to this complete evil being, and then people like are just wow, I never get the chance to be like the quote unquote badass or the the shyster, the evil person in life. So here I have this opportunity to really let it all out, and it's like, is that healthy? Should we have that outlet, or should we look at that and be like, where is that coming from? Why do I feel that way? And is there a healthy way to communicate about that and then no longer feel that way, instead of just using these games to feed that, and then accept that that's the paradigm where, oh, I go out, it feels like that, where like I go out into the real world, I have my job or I have my thing that I'm doing, I'm acting the whole time, like I'm just kind of going through the motions, and I don't really want to be here, I'm just doing what I need to do. Oh, and then I get home and oh, finally I get to masturbate and take drugs that I wouldn't normally take, and play a game that is so far removed from what I'm doing in real life, and I become this badass where in real life I'm completely different.
Yeah.
It creates this kind of like the Batman character, I forget, Two-Face, just this kind of like this dichotomy within. I can see why like Hans talks about the kind of like the two spirit people, the whole like yin yang, like they would love that idea, just kind of like, oh, I have this kind of like version of myself that goes out in public that's all nice, and then behind closed doors I do all this dark shit. And I think that extends a lot into the games, because the people making the games are often these people, so it's like they need to express that kind of yin yang idea very often.
Yeah, very Buddhist, right? Or is that Taoist? I don't know. What's the yin yang from?
Good question. I think it's definitely one of the two. It might be Taoist.
Yeah.
How like the darkness can't exist without the light, and it's like these things are true, but it's like you don't have to make such a stark contrast with everything. Like I think with certain things, like obviously killing somebody, if that's a black and white, like good, there's obvious good not doing it and evil doing that. But then when it comes to a lot of other facets of life, there kind of is there is more of like a spectrum, and I think if you're stuck in that kind of mindset, it can really limit you from thoughts and exploring the world. Like something else I addressed in that video I just did was a big part of the Civil War. I mean, obviously, is this kind of black and white, divide and conquer kind of mentality, and it's like I've been talking about it. Like there's not really any person that's black, like pure black. There's not really any person that's pure white. It's this they just have set up this kind of like chess match where anytime that black and white people get together, it's a big deal. It's like, oh my god, they're getting along, and but when you realize that they're all in on the joke and it's just this kind of divide and conquer thing, then it makes you stop saying that. Like I don't even like calling anybody a black person or anybody a white person. It just feels so wrong. It almost is the same as like saying planet or a kid. It just feels wrong.
Yeah, the divide is massive. Like they love egg to avoid that element, black and white. I think in the sense of like there being pure evil people and there being like pure holy people. I think that's obviously not true. Like everyone has sinned, but um, it's. I think of this Bible verse. Let me read it out. Um, if I can find it real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, and if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and sinners appear? Um, so I'm trying to think of the one where as few as eight are saved. Um, it's in Third Peter, I think. Hold on. Yeah, Third Peter 20. Uh, which sometimes were disobedient, where when once they the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was a preparing, wherein few, that is, eight souls, were saved by water. So it's like there's not that many people are going to be saved, but I think in some sense we can become this white, and there are people that can become this black, where they can become pure evil, and there are people that can become pure good through the Holy Ghost. You know.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing too with with the Holy Ghost, where I mean, if you think about it, like our truth, us coming to all of this and seeing this and finding RFTK Ohio and being like, wow, like this was it the whole time. Like this hits home. It's hard, but it makes so much sense. It's but then you have the
I feel
other.
like I've been searching for it my whole life too.
Yeah, you've been searching for all the whole time because we've been left out. We've been like treated poorly and didn't know why. Seen people come in the neighborhood or into our lives and they're immediately accepted, and we're just sitting there like we've been here the whole time and we didn't, like, what did we do? Why were we so ostracized and different? And there's so many people that are in this same boat. And I think with the advent of technology, even people that are supposedly in the club that throw gang signs are kind of in the same boat in a sense, because what real deep communication is going on that we get exposed to. I mean, there's got to be some, but it seems like it's few and far between. And
That's kind of a good pun, like in the same boat, in the same Noah's Ark.
yeah, in the same Noah's Ark.
We were just talking about that. Uh, that is really true. It's been like ever since I was a child, like just searching out stuff for like evolution, anti-evolution stuff. Like anything that would help me believe in my faith, I've tried to search it out, and like it's always been a challenge. It's like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I'll spend my life differently if I'm wrong. And it's like if you're wrong, where do you turn to? You turn to being kind of this disgusting human being, I think, where it's all about um, kind of deception. I think trying to throw away morality as much as you can, trying to shed the skin of your human being to become like this money obsessed whore.
Yep, it's such a that's such a good point. Where yeah, as soon as you decide that, oh well, I'm a fuck up, or I can't do right, or I'm an outcast, and you lean into that, and you're like, well, I guess I'm an outcast. I'm just gonna further that by doing degenerate things and not being present in life and trying to help people out. It becomes difficult. It's because you're starting this dark spiral where I felt this in my life where I've done that to some extent. I mean, God knows to what extent. Um, and I felt, coming back out of the spiral again. Like I've taken LSD trips where I was just so confused, and for like weeks I just couldn't communicate well. And then I would come out of it and be like, I need to take a break. I need to do healthy things for a while and just be calm again and listen. And what I noticed is when I got into these dark spirals, I had really great difficulty listening to people. Like I couldn't get out of my own head. It was like there was all these other voices going on, and it didn't matter what they were saying because what was going on internally was so wretched that I needed to address it. And it's so important to listen to people. It's so important to hear people for what they're saying and not just return with, oh, but this is what happened to me. It's so important to fully digest what people are saying and give the full response, because if we are being this white, if we are being this kind of, noble, good, pure person, then it kind of dissolves the lines between other people that are also doing this. It becomes like we're the same person to some extent. It's like I can, when I talk to you, as we've gone further in these conversations, it becomes easier and easier and easier because I just see how well thought out you speak, how articulate you are, and how you're becoming more and more
Thank
articulate,
you.
and how easy it is to understand everything that you're saying and where you're drawing your conclusions from and where these things are coming from. Whereas in the past, it's felt like with so many people, it's difficult to build up rapport. There's a lot of walls in the way, and it really you have to dig and and really expose yourself and show humility to really get any depth out of it, any good out of it. And I think that's what makes it so easy to talk to you is because you lay it all out there. Like, you can just hear it in your voice. That there's not any phoniness. There's nothing that feels contrived. It feels genuine and of the rhythm. Like, it's not like you're searching for something or looking for the best thing to say. It's in I'm doing this.
I feel like with so many people, you're just trying to prove yourself to them.
Yes.
That's the sense I get in so many conversations. It's like, oh, I haven't proved myself to you. I'm not a human being yet to you.
Right. It's so weird how we go to that. And it's so common that we feel like we have to prove ourselves time and again. And it's and there's so many iterations of people saying you don't have to, like, come as you are, like, don't feel like you need to put on all this show just to be accepted. And that, I think that theme is such a true and important theme in life. But to actually live it that way, to not go into conversations thinking, oh, what kind of clever thing am I going to come up with to make everybody laugh? Instead, oh, that can come up on its own, and I don't have to force it. I don't, and then a big part of, I think, the Jesus aspect is he has no guile. Like so many people, they use sarcasm as this big facet of their personality, and I've done it. I mean, I grew up in this world. I've definitely done it a million times, and I found out, like, since I've been looking at Hans and reading and looking into you, and just as I get older, really, I mean, maturing and everything. I don't know if you want to say dry. I just don't like sarcasm. It feels like it's from Satan. It feels like a lot of times it's not the healthiest or like smartest thing to say, and it just feels weird to, like, say one thing when your tone says another thing. It just feels strange. It feels like acting. It feels contrived and not genuine. Like, I can't. How can I trust you if every other thing out of your mouth is sarcasm? You can't. And yeah.
That's interesting. I was thinking about that very same thing. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Um, there's like some comedians that I prefer. It's like where they have this really kind of like dark sarcasm over everything. Where it's like you'll never really know what I believe because I just joke about everything. It's important to get the right frame of reference for reality and to stick in the truth, stick in the light.
It is. It's so important. And comedian's a weird one too, because it's like it kind of like it does make sense to have kind of a glee person, someone who, like, comes into these common spaces and brings up the spirits of people and makes everybody laugh. And I mean, maybe you could look at, like, old Bill Cosby. Like, I always think, like he, say what you want about Bill Cosby, he's got the, like, blinded eye, but I'm thinking back on, like, his old comedy routines where, like, there's no cussing. It's all very, like, it's more wholesome. I mean, I don't agree with everything he's saying, but it's compare that with somebody where they're, like, everything out of their mouth or many things out of their mouth are, like, some dark twisted thing that is it's like a shock jock. It's trying to get you to just be like, oh my god, can you believe he said that? And it's interesting because it's like it goes back into, are you trying to get attention and just look good, or are you saying something that is genuine and is funny? and that's why it's funny, and that's why I think is so interesting too. Is it's when you get older, I feel like, and maybe this is something to do with the whole like fake um, puberty these people have. But it seems like when you get older, a lot of this kind of shock jock, like say this crazy thing just to get a reaction, when it's so clear, it doesn't hit me in the way that it used to when I was a teenager. But
Yeah.
but when I hear something that's genuine and like is funny because it's so true, and it makes so much sense, and I'm happy somebody said it. It just it's like another level of depth, and it seems like it takes more time and observation to come to those things than, oh, I'm gonna say something that's just gonna um, like so a comedian that I used to listen to, two things that he said that I recall that are just memorable in my mind is Louis C.K. he talked about like running backwards in a field of dicks, which is like this really visceral, disgusting image, and
Yeah.
it's gross, and it's disgusting, and I think I might have laughed when I was younger because it was just so far out there. But then he also said something like, look at all of these people nowadays on their phones, and like back in the day, people would just have time to stand there and look out into a field, and it goes on, and you don't have a smartphone to immediately look at to like fill in that time, fill that void. And it's funny because it's true. It's funny because
Yeah.
it's
I was gonna say.
yeah, it's funny because yeah, he's got a point. Like, isn't it weird that people aren't just like staring out into the distance and meditating on life and the vastness of God's creation? They're, oh no, here's my phone. While I have the minute, I'm gonna like look at my text and my emails and my my YouTube, and um, I mean
Yeah,
it's all.
this has got to be the least thought through day and age. People aren't contemplating their life or how can I become a better person. And with comedy, so much nowadays it is that shock value versus something that's funny because it's true, which is completely different. And like I find so much of what Han says to be like the funniest stuff in the world because it's so true.
Yeah,
Hearing him just referencing and trying to think back on how it's affected my own life, and it's amazing. I find it so hilarious, some of the stuff Han stuff, more than anything else I found in my life. Guest speaker too. It's just there's so much ridiculousness in this world that it's hard not to laugh at it.
yeah, it is, and it's amazing because it does ring true. I mean, there's a video where Hans, I want to say it's on the BitChute channel, and it's like I think it's the one where like what it's like being a natural human, and he's reading the entire video is him reading guest speakers paragraphs,
Yeah.
and I think one of the parts, it's like she does exaggerate a little bit where it's like, and then the Baffos will like go off and like hump a horse and do all this like disgusting stuff, but then you really think about it and it's like there is some truth to that. Like it gets a little it gets a little crazy, but it makes you laugh because it's like, oh my god, there are a lot of these people that, whether maybe it's pre-marriage, maybe it's the hormone, the bronco piss, there is something to that where it's like they become a little bit strange, and instead of like just looking at it from oh, it's so disgusting, it's like it kind of is a little bit funny in a very weird way that
there are podcasts literally like made for zoophiles. So
zoophiles.
Yeah, that's a real thing. I've heard some podcasts from those individuals who are into fucking horses or into fucking dogs,
Oh my.
and like they die pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
That's how yeah.
It can't be good for you.
They get from that, yeah.
I mean, a horse's Danny and I were talking about that. A horse's penis is like 12 inches, like huge, enormous, and she was talking about a situation where some guy just like willingly let a horse do him and died shortly thereafter because it's getting into your organs. You should, like, what are you doing? And there's Bible verses about like not having enough men and women going to dogs, and it's
not Bible verses. That's some like Torah thing, right?
Oh, sorry, Torah. Maybe sorry, I'm mistaken. Torah, and maybe hopefully that's not true, and they're just stirring up a ruckus. But If there is truth to that, then it needs to be talked about, and it seems like there is some truth to that. Where I do meet people that seem like weirdly attached to their animals, and that kind of goes into the we were talking about before with the video game kind of escapism thing, where nowadays the way the world's set up, I mean, guest speaker talks about how a lot of these people that are programming and like heavily into computers, they designed the world that we live in today, and um, with these things, you have people that can basically like work from home. They don't have to deal with people, and then their animals become their best friends. And I, it's like okay, that's fine. Like a dog's a man's best friend, or having your good pal, like that's fine. But it can't substitute. It can't be a complete substitute for relationships with people.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely. I'd go as far to say degeneracy has no bounds. Like it's a black hole. As much as I hate whatever that is, it literally just keeps pulling you farther and farther down until you're at something that will like kill you. Like
Yeah,
it's just if you don't fight back sin, it's just gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse.
yeah, and there's so many like satanic bands that I mean I just think about rappers and a lot of them that call out this world being a pool of sin, and I kind of I remember hearing that line. I think it's a Wu-Tang Clan line, and thinking like, oh, he's exaggerating or whatever. But no, I think in many ways like there's so many like you drive around your town. I drive around my little town, and it's more than most, but there's sex shops everywhere. There's like three, four of them, five of them. Um, there's all sorts of disgusting things. I mean, like you could have a little child that's like 8 to 10 years old or whatever, sitting in their front seat for the first time with their parent, and then they're driving down the road and look on the side of the road, and it's like we've got ladies, we've got booze, we've got, and
Yeah.
it's like what is that going to do to a child's mind? It's just you're going to get all these weird, ugly thoughts, and treating women like they're objects, or swires even like they're objects. And it's amazing how the world caters to this stuff, and like how we could be doing things like you work at a restaurant, you're making food, I'm gardening. I'm not saying like the avenues what we're doing, like the restaurant that you're working at or the gardening that I'm doing is the most unbelievable, like perfect lifestyle choice ever. I mean, I'm gardening for really wealthy people, don't get me wrong, but and then you're working at a place that's basically like it's not fast food, but it's like the next step up. Um, and
Pretty much, yeah.
but like even guest speaker brings that up too, where hey, someone flipping burgers is doing something that's like way more important than an actor, than somebody who's running a sex shop. That there's so many people that are making money, and like they have lifestyles that are built on things that are just bad. Like there's just
Yeah.
like running a brothel, and like how does that even exist? But they have them, and my partner has a story where when she was 14, they were trying to recruit her to join a brothel, and
Jeez.
it's insane. It's like like you have people that are um, like again pedophiles really, and this culture is just so hypersexualized. You have fake tits on so many advertisements, and one of the big advertisements we have out here is a big liposuction one, where it's like no, like you can easily lose weight and do like just walking around and changing your lifestyle. You don't
Like
have to have fat removed.
you can't liposuction the fat out of the face too.
Yeah,
It's gonna keep looking weirder and weirder.
it's strange, and there's no way you can do it in an equivalency. It kind of reminds me with gardening how so many people will go to like Miracle Grow, where Miracle Grow cannot imitate soil. Liposuction cannot imitate eating well and exercising. It can't. There's no way. It's gonna look strange.
Yeah.
Or
I was thinking to the video game thing we were talking about. It's like nowadays what's the coolest new video game? It's a game that has like the blood splattering on the background on the wall. You just shot someone through it, hit the wall, and the blood is
Yeah.
It's weird. Like that's how my brain's getting. It's like I'm kind of second guessing, like becoming a programmer. It's like what kind of sick game are you going to be a part of where eventually these people, it's causing people to go into violence because they're so obsessed with seeing the blood splattered on their wall after so many kills or whatnot. It's
Yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah, it makes me. I don't know why when you said the blood spatter on the walls, it made me think of that game Gears of War, um, where yeah, you have like again really visceral, carnal like chainsaws and guns and
Yeah, yeah.
heavy blood, like very like juicy stuff, and um, it it's interesting because like I know guest speaker says so much in her talks, and she talks about how she has like she's somebody who's grown up obviously heavily involved with computers and online communities and stuff, video games, and she talks about how she has no faith in computers, and it's interesting because um, like a computer is an amazing piece of technology, and it's like theoretically, you know, if you have this good white spirit, you can imbue that through this amazing device that can be, you know, share that you can share through the internet all this stuff around the world. You can make all this great stuff people can appreciate from far away, and wow, what an amazing tool. And I think I'm guessing she didn't say exactly why she has no faith. I mean, she said it in many ways, but I think one of the main reasons is um, because it's flooded with crap. Like they don't let it run the way it could. Like it could run so well, and it's like they have to like put like fake stuff over it. Like they have to have like all these advertisements. Like I mean, like in finding that Franz Ferdinand thing, like you'd think something like that, some war piece they'd want you to read, they would not fill it with ads. But here I am having to X out of ads as I read through this thing, and
Yeah,
it's
my Bible app has like 30-second, 40-second ads on it too.
it's ridiculous. And it makes you. It's like it's convenient. It's so nice to have it at the like. Oh, it's in my pocket. It's right there. But then why is there all this buffering, this unnecessary load time? Like what? And you can like you can kind of work around it. Like oh okay, it's gonna load. I'm gonna go out of the room. I'm gonna go eat something and come back. And maybe that's just a necessary component of some computing. Yes, there's going to be some load time, but the like the idea that they like implant viruses in your computer and there's like bloatware and spyware and all this stuff that is like just vying to break your computer down. It's amazing how like the internet has all these little um, I don't know what you want to call them like parasites within it, and uh, it's wild because it still is an amazing tool that both of us use every day, and
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, we wouldn't have found each other if not for the internet. So it's interesting because I feel like to some extent I think guest speaker might be missing out a little bit in not having like the one-on-one conversations with people. And maybe she is with Hans or with other people that we don't know about, but you know, to say what she said about like, you know, I turn off the computer, I turn off the internet, I'm getting out of here. Like there's a part of me that gives me pause, and I'm like, there's still a lot of good information out there that we can glean from, you know, YouTube and these you know, just connecting with people online, and I don't know, man. It's she always references the like the golden age of the internet being like the early 2000s when like regular people were involved and there wasn't, you know, smartphones. She talks about how smartphones was like the death of the internet. Um, and I get what she's saying. I think that smartphones, like the idea of the internet, like lowering IQ points, I think smartphones took that to another level where like it's so immediate that you can just really just say total nonsensical things without thinking about it and losing IQ points. Like, why did I say that? Um,
yeah.
but I don't know. Why? Maybe I'm delusioned a little bit, but I still think there's a lot of good things to learn that I'm going to have trouble finding if I'm not using the internet.
Yeah. Okay. So I messaged him earlier about this 50-50 segment where we talk about things where we're not sure about. Maybe this goes to losing some IQ points with the internet coming on. I
Yeah.
thought it'd be interesting if we went through that stuff we're not entirely sure about. And I don't know. I guess I should have some examples for this, but stuff I'm not 50-50 about, which I'm going to bring up for first before we enter into that. It's all the stuff from the Gospels afterwards. It's like Jesus handpicked these individuals um, to listen to, and they write these books for us right after the Gospels, and they're really quite amazing stuff. Like I like seeing what each person finds the most important. So James thinks the most important thing is to not have any oaths, to not say any oaths. Above all, say no oath. And then John says, uh, uh, hold on, let me find this. I think it's truth. I'm not gonna find the direct verse, but John says the most important thing to do is to live in truth, and Peter says the most important thing is charity. So it's so interesting seeing the differences there. But they all have like the same kind of verse where they're talking about that. Like the most important thing above all, do this. Um, and I think Jesus himself, above all, he'd probably say something on the lines of I think the dark quote is like, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and spirit. And the second is to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah. And it's amazing how they all go hand in hand, but it's a different angle on it. Where
Yeah.
um, you said John to not take oaths. It's like it's so important to not like vow yourself when you don't really know the person's intentions, and it very well could be evil. And I mean, the fact that saying take no oaths means that taking an oath almost always has a catch. It's got to have a catch. There's something. It may like the whole idea of like you sign off with the devil and then it looks good at first. Like at first, oh wow, I got all my fame and fortune, but then there's a catch. Making making an oath, it's almost inevitable. You're gonna have some negative aspect, and then the inverse of that, it seems, is it goes hand in hand. But the inverse, the way of looking at it, is charity, which is like the super ego, this over optimism, where hey, you always have something to give. Like protect yourself, like defend yourself, but then on the other end, give. You have so much to give. Shout it from the rooftops. Keep sharing, because and if you have extra food, give it to somebody else. If you have extra whatever, don't sit on it and be like, oh, I'll save it for later, and it's gonna sit in your house and you'll be a hoarder. Um, it's so interesting that they go hand in hand, but they're different elements of our being. In one sense, it's you need to protect yourself because there's evil stuff out there that's going to introduce itself to you and you can't go along with it. And on the other end, like regardless of who it is, be charitable, give, and show that you want to be selfless, and what's most important is providing for your fellow neighbor, like Jesus said.
Yeah. It's so interesting, like the whole communism tear. Like we're scared of communists. Everyone should be scared of communists. But it's just these people that are sharing among themselves, and it's turned into this whole idea where it has to be a government doing it, not just a group of people. Like I love for that to happen, where we can have our group of people, regardless of whether they're intersex or not. Like Hans made a video today. Were you able to check it out?
No, not yet. I want to see. I'll see it after the talk today.
He gives his opinion on that matter. We've kind of discussed a little bit. He was like, at one point in time, I was kind of thinking that all the tears were all like the intersex people. When he adds a little bit more hope into it, where he's like, I don't think that's necessarily it.
It can't be. And a big thing that he talks about again and again is this idea of like, I would say mostly free martins, but maybe there's some swire that just potentially don't know what they are. And it's like, how can you, like people that haven't had any of the hormone treatments, kind of this idea of classes, it's like you're really on the same level as those people. They're being just as duped as you are, and even more so because they're not being like told the truth about, oh, actually you have a body that's this way, and we don't really discuss this stuff. And
especially for the free martins, like they don't have a parent around to give them, spoon feed them all the information. Like they're not a part of that deception whatsoever, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's amazing because your the visceral reaction is just like, oh my god, it's so clear cut, like everybody in Hollywood, and maybe that's it. And maybe like it's people that are elevated and the ones that are doing all these like plastic surgery and hormone treatments, and those are the ones that are like really really deceived because they think of themselves as like a tribe and they only care about themselves when we're deceived on like the base level by like dinosaurs and planets and stuff, but then we don't have this kind of crazy tribalism. And since finding Hans's videos and waking up, kind of like waking up and stuff, that's been the hardest part for me. Is going out into public and not being judgmental of somebody's skeleton. Is just like, what? I really don't know. I've got to be open instead of like, oh well, they're a free martin and they're wearing Under Armour, therefore they're evil. Like no, like it takes a little, like just talk to them, feel it out. Don't get me wrong, there are people that happen to wear Nike and Under Armour that just give me bad vibes, and I can't, you can't break through and they won't let you. But there's also people that happen to be wearing stuff that's just around nowadays, and they seem nice. They seem to have a kind spirit, and then there's people that are in the middle where it's like sometimes I talk to them and it seems awful, and sometimes I talk to them and they have good things to say, and I'm like, wow, like I'm happy to be proven wrong because I had thought that this person was really down a dark path, but maybe there is some hope, and clearly there's hope.
Yeah. Yeah, clearly there's hope. And we were just talking about it earlier. The oaths, they can't do much about a lot of these things. They've been sworn away from telling certain parts of the truth. And what John said was the most important thing was for people to be in the truth. And it's interesting. It'd be nice to have a lot more voices in this realm, but it seems like they're sworn away from it.
Yeah, that's kind of the hard part where it's like I have, like, even in my family, I have people in my family where it's like they have such a nice personality. They're such a kind person who obviously cares about a lot of people, but then it's just when it comes to all these things, they really can't do anything. Like if they can't talk about it in depth, and it's frustrating. But it makes me think of there's this song I used to listen to by the National called Cardinal Lies, and it's like there shouldn't be cardinal lies. Like why? Like that's you can't. How can you? Why does it's the whole Hogwarts thing? It's like why there can't you don't need cardinal lies. You don't need these like things that just need to sit in their goal and they stay there and you can't mess with them. But it's so prevalent that yeah, you have people that are like nice around the corners, but then they get to these conversation topics and then they're stuck. It's like they can't pull out of it. I mean, I had an experience with a guy that I would talk to at my apartment when I was living back in Connecticut, and he well, Shim. I'm pretty sure Shim had the baby, and Shim also gave me pretty rough vibes. But there was this one time, Shim went up to me and said, "Oh, can you believe that people believe in this flat Earth stuff?" And I was just like, "Well, it's in the Bible," and they just like ran away. Like they literally ran away, and like no talk after that. Ran away, and I didn't see them for a few days, and it was so strange. It was like this person was either like they put it on themselves or they were just told to say this, and then I gave the most courageous, or not most courageous, but like I gave like the courage like response. I'm not gonna just go along with it response, and they weren't expecting it, and they just ran away. Like they're like, oh, he didn't say, oh yeah, what fools, or oh, haha, whatever. I said, well, actually, it makes sense. This is why, and he couldn't handle it. Like walked away, and another.
Grievances. Among grievances, I think the flat Earth one is so big. It's like it's going against the Bible hardcore, and the fake evolution, and just all the among the lies. Like certain of them are worse than others.
Yeah, yeah, and like it does feel like certain ones are way worse than others. The flat Earth one is so bad because it brings in all these ideas of just I guess like I talked about it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or the chakras, where you're just, if you think that we genuinely live in a world like that where it's all chaotic and there, like, how can you say there's a God because there's a Big Bang, and you're just never gonna you're never gonna be like calm enough to make anything good. Like you're always gonna be on edge. You're always gonna be kind of like nervous, and if it's not if it's not this fake model, the globe and all the crazy things that come with it, it's the news and all these shootings and yeah, there are certain aspects that just seem way worse than others. Like um, like I don't know, like as bad as zebras are, like it's really messed up what they do to zebras. They don't paint their noses, and I don't even know if they use that. Like if what they're doing is like that unhealthy, it might just be pure like black and white. We just want to, rep the tribe kind of thing. Like that, it seems like it's not as bad as like lying about school shootings. Like that is just it's so evil. Like how anybody can like hear somebody say, "Oh, I don't believe in school shootings," and then like here's why, and then double back on them and like get them to push. It's like, wouldn't you want to know why people don't believe in school shootings? Isn't that like really helpful to your psyche and to your soul to know that maybe
Yeah.
these really dark, um,
It's so demonic.
it's so demonic. These serial killers and these school shootings aren't happening. Like that's such a relief. It's such a, oh my god, wow. Like I was here thinking that every year we're gonna have some big shooting. It might be in my town, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I remember just preparing for a school shooting by trying to become friends with like the one outcast in my grade. I was like, I really want to be nice to this guy, otherwise.
Yeah, you really want to be nice to the outcast because you think that they might turn around and do what the Columbine, like, they've been thinking this whole time about who they're going to kill, who they're going to pick off, all the popular kids, all the like the jocks, the people that put them down.
I think oh, I hear you now. I hear you now.
Yeah, it's such a clear angle because the system they set up with like popular kids and it makes sense why people would go to that because they feel like there's no movement, there's nothing they can do. It's like it's all set in place with popular kids and jocks, and they treat people like shit and hazing and all that, and it makes this
Yeah, you can tell that they know the school shooting's fake just because of how much they're dicks to everyone else. They're like, oh, no one's gonna clap back. There's gonna be no like school shooting happening, so they're just dicks the whole time.
they're dicks the whole time. Like you would think after you hear about Columbine, something that happened in the early 1990s, that both of us throughout our education would have people around us that knew about that and would behave much better. But that's not what
Yeah.
I saw at all. I saw
No.
popular kids that would routinely ostracize not just myself but most everybody else. And they literally, I've talked about it before, they literally had higher tables than the rest of the cafeteria. It was like this false hierarchy that they leaned into so hard, but it wouldn't make any
Yeah.
sense. It wouldn't make any sense for them to do that if these school shootings were legitimate.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's why it was so
And
confusing.
it's such a weird idea. Like if you think about what a school shooting is, like would anyone really want to just go out and die? And like okay, you killed a couple people with you, but there's these like jocks and dicks like everywhere. If you really hate the world, then you understand it's not like a problem that can be fixed by just dispelling of a couple of them. Like if you really wanted to get back at them, you just fuck their mom.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah. If you wanted to get back at them, you probably would. I mean, you just wouldn't like you would treat them how they're treating you to some extent. Like you don't have to be mean to them, but why would you talk to somebody who's ostracizing you and bother? Why would you care about their opinion if they're so um, you know they're so angry and mean to you, and they never have anything nice to say to you, and they act condescending. That's the word. They act condescending towards
Yeah.
you. Like, is it good to be condescending back? Maybe like once to show them, hey, I get what you're doing. This is what you're doing. I'm going to show you how it feels. But then
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yeah, like would Jesus do that? Would he condescend just to show them, or would he just, you know, I don't think he would. I think he probably would, be composed and just speak his truth and accept whatever they got to throw at him and be like, okay,
Right.
here's the other cheek. Keep going. See how you feel. Because really, at the end of the day, this is you projecting. You're so unhappy. You have to use me as your punching bag. You have to use.
This could segue into a good subject.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
um, and yeah, I think that's such a good lesson of like, raise the other cheek, because you know so much of our anger and our darkness, it's internally derived. And for us to be channeling these things through video games or movies, or just things that aren't real, it's unhealthy. And then it can often turn into people being disgruntled bullies their whole lives. And they don't even understand why or how it began. And it was probably internal, and they had to make it external, and they just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then it becomes this spiral where it's impossible to get out of, and people all have these preconceived ideas of how you're going to act, because you've acted the same way all the time. And you've only ever been like this way, with a chip on your shoulder and mean. And it's amazing how it is like 100%, like that is the line. It's internal, like whenever I have done that stuff, whenever I have insulted somebody, it always has felt wrong. Whenever I have
Yeah.
whenever I have done any sort of and I generally was more bullied when I was young. But I can think of a handful of occasions, especially in early elementary school, where like, oh, I learned what the word chink meant, and then I'd go and turn around and call my best friend chink, like Chinese, like an N word for a Chinese person or something. And
Yeah.
I didn't really mean it, but I just wanted to see their reaction, and it was just stupid. It was this. It turned into a storm, and it was all internal. It was very much my own, low self-esteem, and just trying to mess with things. I don't feel good, so I'm gonna put my bad feelings on you.
Yeah. I remember in school how Hans's stuff clicked with me so well. Well, I had this really memorable moment when someone was measuring my digit ratios with a piece of paper and gave me like a paper cut. I might have already told you this, but for the viewers, gave me a paper cut in between my fingers while mentioning the digit ratio. And I remember like the same group of friends, like they would go up to the kid, and because he had transitional lenses on, they snapped it in half. Like there's just when you realize that school shootings aren't real, no one's gonna clap back ever. Like they do this heinous shit, and like they think it's hilarious. Just the degeneracy. It only spirals into worse and worse. And I'm guilty of fucking with people a lot too. But it's just so weird. Like the shit that they'll do. It's absurd.
It's
I remember.
amazing. It is absurd, and it's amazing how.
Did you ever
Oh, go ahead.
squirrel tapping? Did you ever have squirrel tapping in your school?
Squirrel tapping?
Yeah.
What's that?
It's like you punch people in the nuts.
Oh, they called it Jimmy tapping. Yeah.
Jimmy tapping, yeah. That shit was insane. Like, I remember that at a very young age, too. And the guy who started it all didn't get suspended as well. It was weird.
Did they have? Are they like? You think they're like a more Masonic person?
Yeah, for sure. Guy was Masonic as fuck.
Yeah, it could be. And the character the person I have in my mind that did that a lot, like he just seemed like closet gay. Like he would. It was usually in baseball. Like that was the way that they would frame it, because in baseball you had to wear a cup. So like he
Yeah.
would say, "Oh, I'm gonna Jimmy tap you to check if you're wearing your cup," and I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like it was like an excuse for him to punch your balls, because he was like somewhat interested. It felt like.
Yeah.
And maybe partially it was just to mess with us, but I felt there was kind of a gay thing to it, where like I want to touch some balls, or
It seems so gay. Like it's just them expressing their feminine side in reality, and it is gay, but that's just who they are naturally.
it is. Um, it's kind of it's on the same lines, but I have this like classic story in my life where I was in fifth grade, and I had this friend over, and we played capture the flag through the woods with my neighborhood. Like my neighborhood was a lot of people were my age, and I had a lot of like people around that I could go to hang out with and stuff. Before middle school, really, it was okay, I guess. But at this time, we went to this capture the flag game, and one of my friends at the time, he was in jail. Shim Free Martin was in jail, and they were like, "Oh, jailbreak," and I'm the one who's playing defense, And I'm like, what? No, you can't do that. Like that just ruins the whole purpose of the game. Like, no, someone has to come over and tag you, and you know the rules. This isn't fair. This is I don't want to play anymore if you're gonna act like this. And
Yeah.
I'm immature. I'm 10, 11 years old, and what happened was I told him again and again, you can't do that. So then he picks up he's next to one of those Bilcos, those like cellar doors, and he picks up the hose and he's swinging it like, oh well, I dare you to tag me basically. I dare you to put me back in jail. So I run over to him, I dodge the hose, and I did the gay thing. I just grabbed his testicles as hard as I could. I didn't want to fight. I just squeezed as hard as I could because I knew it would end it. I was like, now it's over. You're in pain. It's over. Like, and it was one of the stupidest things I ever did. Maybe there was some closet weirdness in it, but I wound up apologizing to this person. I felt terrible about it, but it started from such like just a bad like petty nonsensical angle, and it wound up into this big storm where everybody in the neighborhood's like, oh my god, can you believe what he did, me? And but then they didn't understand the beginning of it, where the whole thing started because of him, and like he's somewhat culpable. And
Yeah.
um,
I get that. I like getting really like autistic about the rules and like being pissed off about it.
yeah,
I was playing airsoft one time, and we were done with it. We went back to the house. The guy had his like fucking like $300 gun or whatever, and started shooting me point blank at. It just started shooting me like crazy, and then I eventually like go and fight the guy and like get him in like a neck choke or whatever, and then his twin brother comes over and starts like fucking with me as well. And if it weren't for like right then, like someone knocking on the door, I probably would have like passed out. Thankfully, my pastor came over just at the right time.
yeah, that's a relief because that scenario is so common where it's like the bullies messing with you, and then you are the one responding, and you're like, this needs to end. This needs to be like, it needs to resolve itself,
Yeah.
and you need, and then you need to show them what they did and put them in, like basically what you were doing is just trying to put him in a chokehold, just end it, like just know like he's gonna pass out or he's gonna be so out of sorts that this isn't gonna continue. But then it turns
Yeah.
into, oh, you're the bad guy, and the brother gets on you, and then of course you're the real man, so you get blamed for everything, and
Right.
it it is annoying, but it's like in that scenario, I guess maybe you're just like, well, if you're gonna play this way, I'm gonna walk home. Because I had the same thing where I didn't have the airsoft gun, but the guy on the deck, the guy that I was at his house, he had all the airsoft guns, and his condition for us using them was he got to shoot us as we went off the deck, like just like free shots, point blank shots,
Wow.
and one of my friends almost got shot in the eye and was like livid at him, like really frustrated, really angry at him, and
Yeah.
this same person, the same bully, he kept doing this for a while, and he eventually had his comeuppance. But it took a lot of people getting the same treatment from him to finally break the pattern. And it's just amazing how ingrained this bullying is and how it goes on so many levels, and how it's very easy to succumb to it, like to like, oh, someone's messing with me, I'm gonna mess with them right back.
Yeah.
And I, most of my stories like that happened in the same window as very much like 10 years old to like 15, 14 years old. I'd get in these little skirmishes. Um, and I look back and it's laughable because it's all this stupid, I gotta look good kind of energy. Um, another big one that comes to mind, which again, this is I'm telling these stories because I think a lot of people, or we're telling these stories, a lot of people are going to relate, and it's just, what do you do if you're a young person and you got all this, I don't know, just all these, emotions and running and all this like chaos of being a teenager. You're having hormonal changes that are natural. Other people are having false hormonal changes, and these things are butting head.
At an astonishing rate too. The testosterone abuse is not the normal amount.
No, these thick full beards in middle school, high school is amazing. But I have this story where I was playing flag flag. No, it was tackle football, but we weren't playing. It was like neighborhood. Like, oh, these are all people that can handle being tackled. Like they're not going to limp out or go to their mom or whatever. Um, so we're playing tackle football at the high school, and I was playing wide receiver, and I caught. I think it was like 3 or 4 touchdowns, and each time I was in the end zone clearly, like after the play, this person would come over to me and tackle me hard, and I'm like, I'm already in, like,
Yeah.
like what are you doing? You're just tackling me because you're angry and you're pissed or whatever. So then I turned around and I fucking punched him and like just retaliated, and they continued. We went home. We got in a fist fight, and the other kids or tears. I don't know what you want to call them. If we think there is hope, then let's not call them that. Let's just call them people. Then the other people were around me, kind of egging them on. They weren't helping. They weren't pulling us off each other. They were just, let's see a fight. And it's amazing how like such stupid like beginnings can lead to just a really bad feeling and broken relationships, and nothing was, it all started, it seemed like, because this person was just frustrated and wanted to put me down. And I mean, I have stories where I've like hit my brother and he did nothing wrong to me at all. I hit him because I was mad at him because I stole his money and I wanted him to be fine with it. Like just evil shit I did because I was so I just needed to be smoking pot all the time. I needed to escape my life because it was so. Maybe that's an excuse unto it in itself. But being a young person and just going through all the things that we've gone through, it was awful what I did, and I repent for it and whatnot. But it's amazing looking back how these things start from such a childish, selfish, self-centered perspective. It's like you want to destroy the people around you because your inside is so filthy, and it's just the wrong way. It's like you got to turn there and be like, what? Why is my inside so filthy? Why do I feel like this? I don't want to harm somebody because I feel like this. What do
Yeah.
you know?
I think that reminds me of a verse. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our sins, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. It's good that we're bringing these out in the open. I've definitely done fucked up shit too. I remember all the time I'd be hanging off this playground equipment. It was pretty high up, and my friend would always go up and pry my fingers off and try to get me to fall down on my back and like break my ribs or some shit like that. And then in the one time that I did it back to him, after like probably like weeks and weeks of him doing that to me, he ended up falling down. When I didn't fall down, he actually fell down and hit his back, and it was like, I don't even know if he probably had to go to the hospital or something like that. And it's like there's so much terrible shit we do when we are just, we're naturally sinners. It takes work to cleanse yourself from that unrighteousness, and it takes the power of Jesus, especially. Yeah.
It definitely does, and it sounds like in that case, that person definitely had the wind knocked out of them, and like even if they had done it time and time again, the whole time it's building, and you're just like, you're like clenching your teeth, like, I want to, and you're holding back, and then one time you're just like, you know what, this person deserves it. They keep doing it to me, and
Yeah.
and then it's that time where it's like, damn it, I could have stayed on the higher road and not done it, and I didn't have to do it, but vengeance is God's. Like it's so hard when you're being bullied. So hard to not retaliate, but
Right.
but when it doesn't go anywhere, and it doesn't help things, and it just shows that you're just as capable of doing these dark things as anybody else. It takes a little bit more maturity, or I don't know, just I guess like a bigger picture to really stop and say, okay, well, if this person keeps doing this to me, maybe I should just walk away, and then I'll get back on the playground equipment when they're not there. And if they keep doing that, then I'm gonna calmly and politely tell them, listen, I don't like that you do that. And then if I do that and they still keep doing it, I'm actually, if I'm a child, I'm going to go to their parent or I'm going to go to my parent and be like, Johnny keeps doing this to me. It's not good. I don't like it. I keep telling him to stop and he keeps doing it. And um, not to mess with Johnny's. Nothing's wrong with Johnny's particular, but just the idea that it's hard to think of the rational solution to being bullied when you're young. And again, I think it's a lot easier to sin when you're young. Um, it kind of like you have more like people have a wider acceptance for you to do bad. Like you're not going to go to jail if you punch somebody when you're 12 years old. You might go to juvenile hall maybe, but in all likelihood it'll be resolved and maybe you have to write a paper or you get punished in some other way. Whereas if you're an adult, it's pretty clear cut. There's not really an in between. Um, so it's interesting that it's like vengeance is God's, and even if somebody's really irritating you in the moment, you got to be you don't want to retaliate. You want to respond, and you want to be very calm because they're either going to get bored and go away because they're not impacting you the way that they want to, or yeah, like you're just going to feel better at the end of the day because you didn't succumb to their taunting.
Yeah, and it's like we're supposed to rejoice when we're experiencing suffering for Christ's sake, and that's a hard one to comprehend at first. But when you realize it's about your heaven bugs, not your earthly bugs, it makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a massive trial.
It really
Okay,
is.
so I mentioned this earlier. Stuff we're 50-50 on. I'm gonna throw out icebergs as a possibility.
Okay.
Um, Definitely the cartoon kind of sideways ones don't make a lot of sense to me because they can like flip over. But I can understand like a kind of gigantic rectangular piece of ice. That might make sense.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so like a big argument against icebergs is that if you were to use the microcosm of like your glass, like ice never behaves that way. You don't see like just a little bit at the top and everything else is submerged. And like another big thing about icebergs, at least like how they're depicted, is that they're like it seems like they're like sitting in one place a lot of the time. Like they're very
Yeah,
so like I think an argument for that would be like this idea of like a glacier where you have this thick snow mass that fell off the glacier and is in the ocean and rests there, but I feel like it would move. Or maybe it's like it's so strange. Like maybe you have like you're close to land and you have an area that has like this kind of like glacial deposit and it's technically on the ocean floor and it's just the top of it's exposed like that can make sense to me. But yeah, it is weird that like it doesn't seem that ice would operate that way. It'd be very hard to emulate the iceberg that the Titanic ran into, or
yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm sticking by that. I'm 100% on it. Never mind.
I don't
Um,
know. It's because it like
or like 80-20 possibly.
yeah, I feel like it's unlikely that the icebergs are real, and then it's the kind of idea that like we talk about the things about the truth behind things being these icebergs, like
Yeah,
all the depth of them, like where it's a word that we're using all the time, but it's never even a real thing to begin with. Um, it, I don't know. I think I gotta do more studying on that, and like I would always think about it in relation to like the North Pole or like what we formerly thought was Antarctica, where yeah, like you have this kind of like glacial deposit that just is not too far from the main mass, and it sits there, and these ships may not be able to see it, but I don't know. I have trouble believing it. I think you'd have a hard time not seeing it, and it would be very obvious that it's connected to a landmass or close to a landmass.
I'm 100 0 on Antarctica definitely being somewhere hidden. Like we see the optical flip. Like if you have a glasses for example, and you hold it far enough away, the image flips. So that's what happens to the moon in weather over in Australia, so it would make sense that something also close to the center, not the center, the middle, the upmost, um, would also have that flip. I bet Antarctica's just got some wonderful weather, and they're just keeping that away from natural human beings.
It's so interesting we're talking about this now because Danny and I were watching, or not watching, we were looking at the Google Maps, the plain version of Antarctica that they give us. And
Yeah.
you look at it and you wonder if there's like little, shards of truth in what they depict. Like maybe the size of it and even how it like looks, but then they just put this like you know filter, this big white mass over everything, and there's a couple little like, islands around it that look legitimate, but then you have like strange like other color filters, and even the ocean looks weird on it. Like the ocean looks like it's some painted wall with like all the chips in it, and it doesn't look like what ocean would look like. Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. That Antarctica is just a complete farce. They kind of give you the hint with like Antarctic, and like the North Pole is often
Yeah.
referred to as the Arctic, so it's like the opposite of the
Yeah.
Arctic. Um,
Exactly. And antithetical. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, it's like their brazen lie, and I mean we talk about it too. Like it could be the Garden of Eden. Like it could be this amazing place that has all these things growing that we don't even know about. And isn't it amazing to think that there is a potential that we could visit it? Like how amazing that would be phenomenal if we could actually go there and see it for
That does
ourselves.
make a lot of that does make a lot of sense with like biblical cosmology. Eden is being protected with like a flaming sword that no one can go to it. So it would make sense that it's like just some protected lands that even the inverts can't go to.
It's wild, and like the whole idea of it being a trial, and like it makes me think of how like you're supposed to be like we are like we're servants in Babylon, but then it's like the king of Babylon is like it's supposed to be some obvious evil person, but they can go to Antarctica, so they're the one with the flaming sword, and they're like it's so weird to think of that in like real life in real time, where like that flaming sword represents what I don't know, all the actors, all the presidents, all the prime ministers, all these people wearing masks, and then you have regular people that are like they will like get along with you in person, they'll pretend to get along with you, but then all along they have all these secrets, and they're guarding their Eden with a flaming sword. And I mean if they're gonna defile this place, I don't think that they're keeping Antarctica all that nice either. Like I don't like it can't be the Eden of Adam and Eve. It's got to be somewhat degraded, I would think, but I don't know.
I think the whole idea with the flaming sword is that no one can get to it, possibly.
Oh, that's interesting. I actually hope that
That's what
that's
I
the
kind of meant.
case, and it's not that they're protecting it and guarding it, and they all go there, and like we talked about before, like people retire and go to Antarctica because they put in their time in Babylon or something.
Yeah.
Like that is way.
I bet a lot of like fake deaths. It's like maybe they can go to Antarctica. They fake their death. They're just going somewhere else. I remember reading an interesting book. It was about like something like that where it was flat Earth orientated, and it would just have the most exquisite music over there, like talking about a whole other culture being in Antarctica. It was very interesting. Flat Earth too.
A whole
I
nother
remember that book
culture.
pretty well.
Yeah. And it does seem like there's old maps. I can't. I'm gonna have to find it and then bring it up. But there's old maps where it shows Antarctica with like forests and all sorts of
Really,
vegetation, and oh
really.
yeah, like and it kind of goes in line with the ancient Egypt thing, where like they talk about ancient Egypt as if it was formerly this like fertile land with all these with amazing you know places to grow fruit and all these resources all around, and it's turned into a desert. Where like Antarctica kind of has a similar connotation, where formerly it was maybe this like amazing Garden of Eden, but now it's this ice crap. But then that's just their cover up. It still is maybe this Garden of Eden or like the center of all life that from whence life all goes. Mount Meru or something. You know that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry, dude. I have this interesting story. It's like this Mount Meru you were saying. Sorry.
Okay, okay, hold on. Can I? I'm gonna
I just got
pause this and
excited.
then
So
start the second audio file. Is that okay?
yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I'm gonna pause. I'm gonna stop this first audio file and start the second one. Let's go to the second segment. All right, back on.
All right. I had this total terror experience. Um, so pretty much, um, I have to do this whole like nature thing for one reason or another. And the guy is the same one who taught me as a kid. He was going into explanation about the Earth and how old it was. He's like, my arm span. Imagine if it's 8 billion years. Okay, we're right here. This is when the dinosaurs were. This is when they went extinct. Now we're right here. We're at a little portion of my hand. This is how long humans beings have been around. And like was going over and over into evolution stuff. And eventually we got into talking about. I brought up something about GMOs. Um, how like they're not adapted for their environment because the whole time he was just trying to get me think of evolution. He was talking about how uh, instead of an intelligent design, people do this all the time in like biology classes. You have to explain how it's adapted for its environment. It's not created for its environment. And was going into example, putting it in the frame of evolution. And then after we were talking about GMOs, right? Talking about how we have less nutrition in our food. Crops aren't adapted for their environment, as he put it, and we're getting less nutrition out of it. And he's then pointed out, I was like, yeah, people are getting so fat. And then this group of natural women came crossing the line. He's like, look, I mean, look at them. I mean, look at them. And he told me, like, I actually have a look or whatever. He's like, look what's happened to America. People are so fat. It was just like disgusting. Trying to sink my mind into being okay with some skinny tranny and think she's healthy. She's, for whatever reason, looks more skinny. When in reality, it's just biology. It was such a ridiculous time. I wanted to immediately share the story on this podcast after hearing that.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that is such a good one because um, he's selling it to you all backwards. Where, yeah, like we need GMOs. There's so many people we need to feed, and all
Oh
these
yeah,
all these animals have these adaptations.
yeah, yeah. You started talking about overpopulation too. It was like, yeah, it's just what we have to do for the amount of people we have here.
Mm-hmm. And
It's ridiculous. Like the amount of lives some people spend, it's it's insane. Like total terror energy.
it's
When
terror
they
energy.
know it's all bullshit too, and they just can go on and on and on about the bullshit.
Yeah, and it feels like a playbook too, where like you didn't even mention that aspect, but then he went on to that because it's such a like I've probably gotten some form of that too, and I mean, but yeah, I mean a lot of our schooling is that they introduce GMOs as that like we just have so many people we need to feed, and that's why they exist, and um,
Yeah, the education whole sphere is the most like diabolical. Like everything is about bringing you away from God, just straight up.
yep, and it really makes you wonder about like the teachers we've had and like how many of them are like genuinely duped. Like I do feel like there were genuine teachers I had that were duped, that were the nicer ones and meant well. And I feel like, but I felt like a lot of them, maybe the majority, were this is our doctrine and we stick to this and we chuckle and like it is amazing how far gone this whole like playbook. I don't like thinking making you think that everything has to adapt and nothing's natural and you're constantly in this race and you like Darwin, right? Like the natural selection, like you got to really fight and tooth and nail and adapt, and your family has to like give everything every moment of their lives because uh, they may not survive in this changing world. Um,
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous, and um, I mean, it's like it's kind of I guess I kind of have responded to a lot of that in the same way that guest speaker has because I've always